Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Evergreen from Horrible Guild. Evergreen is a 1 to 4 player game of planting your trees, watching them sprout into larger and bigger trees, and being mindful of both the size of your overall forest, as well as the way the trees and the sun will cast shadows in order to score as many points as possible. You're going to be doing this across 5 rounds of play, and every single round you're going to be mindful of the fact that the sun is rotating 4 rounds of play. I don't know why I said 5 rounds, 4 rounds of play, and the sun is going to be rotating around the board so that every single time in the game, and this is your own personal player board, every player has their own of these, you're going to be mindful of the way the sun casts shadows 4 different angles throughout the course of the game. On your turn, you're going to be selecting a card from the row of cards over here. You're always going to have 1 card more than the number of players. So for example, we're set up for a 3-player game. We have 4 cards in the row over here, and I'll select a card which will determine where I can do things, as well as the bonus action, as well as I have to be mindful of which card is left because it will affect the board. So for example, I particularly at the moment, I actually really want this card over here because I want to start putting hedges out. The problem is I'm eyeing the fact that this card is in play, but we'll come back later as to why I care about that. I'm actually going to go ahead and take this card, and that means I'm going to be able to do 2 things. I'm going to be able to do the bonus action, as well as a standard action, which is listed on your board, and there's 4 types of standard actions that relate to the terrain I have. Now, to go over those actions, the first action you can take is you can plant 3 of these little guys over here. You can plant these into the region on the board. So for over here, I can go ahead, I can take a look at this region here, and I can put these down into that region. There are symbols for colorblindness if you need those, but we're going to go ahead and put down 3 buds into this region. That would be an action. The other actions you can take is you can alternatively, instead of putting 3 buds down, you could take 2 grow actions on different plants. So I could take 2 of those buds and plant them into these. Now keep in mind, I did just put both those out this particular turn right now, so you can't actually do both actions. I'm just showing you the way the actions work. So either place 3 buds, take 2 grow actions, and a grow action could be growing a bud into a tree, a sprout into a tree, or growing a small tree into a large tree is another type of grow action in the game. The next action you could take is you can put down a sprout as well as a grow action, again on different pieces, you can't do the same piece. And the last action is take a sprout or a grow action anywhere on the board, disregarding the actual locale of the card. That's the core actions of the game. Placing down sprouts, growing things, or placing down sprouts or growing things. The question is just where and how many and in what distribution. Past that, you can take your bonus action. Now you could take your bonus action before or after, so any order you want. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the particular bonus action marker, which is this one over here. I'm going to advance it. You always advance your marker unless you're at the max, and then take that action that number of times. So for example, my first times I take this action, I'll be able to do 1 sprout onto the board, 1 hedge or bush or whatever, and the second 2 times I'll be again 1. Next time I do it, I'll be able to do 1, and after that, every future time will be 2 at a time. As you move up these tracks, your actions get more stronger, so trying to lean into certain bonus actions will give you more flexibility in the game. We'll take this, we'll put this on the board, and this is nice and useful for a variety of reasons. We'll talk about that more later, but I'm going to drop that right over there. In fact, actually, you know what? I'm actually going to move this over here. I think over here is slightly better. We'll talk about that more later. That's going to be the core action. Other players are going to take their cards, and this is where we'll play things out 2 different ways. Option 1 is we'll go ahead and have this like so, and this will be the card remaining, and this will go down over here. It's also worth noting that I was the first player to take a card, which means I would then put this on that card over there, and whoever takes that card will become first player for next round. So let's pretend someone took it. That card's gone, this card's gone, and this card is left, which means it's going to go down over here, and this row of cards is going to determine the end game scoring for how much each big tree is worth in that region. So for example, a big tree, which I already have one over here, this big tree in this region is going to be worth 4 points because 1, 2, 3, 4. So the cards that are left over in the game are going to determine the scoring for any large trees in that region, which means taking cards for certain regions will lock you in, but also mean that the region is worth fewer points. If I hadn't taken this, then this would be over here, but I also wouldn't have the big tree, so there is that catch-22 aspect there. Now, what happens if a death card is left? Well, if a death card is left over, let's pretend this was taken, and the death card is the one left over. In that case, this one goes over here, but a death card actually turns over the single card below it, which means my 2 sprouts in this region over here, my 3 sprouts in that region, have less of a reason to grow because this card didn't add anything. In fact, it hurt the card above it. That's going to be the turn sequence in the game. You take a card, you activate the card's action and the bonus action in any order. You're also going to have a card going down to the meadow. You're going to do that until you have 5 cards in play the first round, 4 cards the second round, 3 cards the 3rd round, and 2 cards the last round. Meaning, throughout the course of the game, your bonus actions get stronger and what you have on the board is stronger, but you have fewer cards every single round. Now, when the round is over, when you have your 5 cards over here, let's go ahead and just put a few trees out in different ways so we can get a few different options as far as how things are going to play out over here. Let's put that over here, and let's put this over here. Let's do that, and let's do that. That should do it over here. Great. Over here, if this is the situation right now, we're going to score for two things. You're going to score for the size of your forest, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. These shrubs over here, they connect your forest areas. Your largest forest on the board is always going to be worth that many points, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're going to score for the sunlight over here. And the sunlight works is that every large tree is worth 2 points, and every small tree is worth 1 point, but only if they don't block each other. Trees are going to cast shadows one another. A small tree has a distance of 1 blocking, and a large tree has a distance of 2 blocking. So the way that manifests over here is, for example, this large tree is worth 2 points, and it blocks 2 behind it, but nothing's behind it. This one's worth 1 point. That one's worth 2 points. This does not block that. If we did have a large tree right behind this one, let's pretend that we did, this tree over here would be worth no points because it is blocked by this tree, and in fact, it even blocks this tree down here. So because of the situation over there, that's one particular piece, by the way, does not fit. That's I keep running that piece back and forth. But over here, so this would be worth 2 points, 1.2 points, but this blocks this, and this still blocks this because it blocks 2 back. Versus over here, this one will block this, so this will get 2 points. It will block this, which gets none, but then the blocking distance caps out there, and this one will once again score. So you're trying to be mindful of that, but more importantly, next round, the sun's going to rotate to the next area, and you'll have to notice that the way trees block each other are totally different depending on the configuration and the angles of light. And so now, for over here, every single one of those trees are going to score because of the way the sun casts light in this direction, although of course that can change in a heartbeat as soon as you start building other things in the board. You're going to do that across the course of the game, 4 rounds of play, moving the sun, gathering cards, until eventually you get to the end of the game, where after scoring for the final round's largest forest and shadows, you'll also score for the distribution of the cards in the meadow over here, and how many points each of your large trees are worth, which can be a nice chunk of, 20 to 40 extra bonus points, depending on how well you structured everything in the game. And that is Evergreen. Take a card, trigger the action, trigger the bonus action in any order you want. Do that 5 times the first round, 4 times the second round, 3 times the third round, while your actions slowly level up in power, which is actually a good time to cover the last thing, which is what do all the actions do. This action over here lets you take a small tree growth. This action lets you take a planting sprouts on the board, 2, 3, and 4. This is 1, 2, and 3, so these go up every single action. This is a large tree growth, 1, 1, and 2. Over here, straight up points. That action there is just straight up points in the game, which is 1, 1, 2, 4. And again, if you keep taking it at 4, you'll just keep getting 4 points. Then over here we have the water action. The water action serves to be able to, when you place this down, let's say over, I don't know if I have a good place to put it. When you place it down over here, you can immediately take 2 growth actions on 2 spots adjacent to the water. These trees are falling over, by the way, but let's go ahead and just knock this down. So we'll go ahead and replace this one with that. And then we'll go ahead, same tree again. It is the same exact tree every single time. We're going to go ahead and put this one over here, and then put that over there. And that is basically how the water action works. And that is Evergreen. Which brings us to the review, starting off with ease of play. Overall, the rules are fairly clear in this game. The rules are fairly straightforward as far as everything you're doing, not overly complicated, very easy to dive into. Plays in around 45 to 60 minutes, which I think is what the box says, and I would say 45 to 60 minutes, and I would say that's around accurate. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, the special actions plus standard card play, plus the general puzzle over here, it kind of works nicely together to just give you a spatial puzzle that you're trying to think through, not just how this round plays, but how next round plays, and how the round after that plays as you go through the game. Because there's a lot to consider as you build out your board. You have to be mindful of the way shadows are cast, the ways to manipulate your tree growth, but also the limitations of cards, because you have certain cards that you have to take those cards to take the bonus actions, or to take the regular actions even, to try to get what you need as far as getting everything onto the board and deciding when sprouts is more important, when planting is more important, and all the different things you're trying to do in this puzzle. And then you're trying to balance that with the general size of your largest forest, which is a big struggle to balance, because a largest forest almost inherently requires trees next to each other, but trees next to each other are going to run into aspects of the size, the height, how close they are, what's blocking each other, and so you have 2 different competing factors that inherently are at odds with one another, and it's how you merge those factors and the timing of when you merge those factors that's going to be a big driving force in how well you score in this game. Trying to power through your actions in the game, trying to power through which actions, like taking more shrub actions so you can start taking progressively more powerful. Putting down 2 shrubs a turn will give you a lot of control over keeping that largest forest while not blocking shadows, versus getting your water stronger will enable to start getting a ton of extra sprout actions, extra growth actions that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And there's lots of small levers as far as these different bonus actions and the ways you combine them with your core actions in the game that you have to be mindful of. And then lastly, of course, the aspect there's always a card left, so you're trying to think through which domain, which biome over here is going to be worth the most points at the end of the game, and how do you account for that? And occasionally and infrequently, how do you specifically and intentionally choose a card that you wouldn't have chosen? Maybe I actually want this card, but in fact, if I take this card, I'll be able to deny somebody else points because it's going to cover up their region, deny them. They have more of an impact impact there, there's also that aspect you're trying to juggle. So overall, it just comes down to a game that teaches quickly, plays quickly, and gives you a rewarding puzzle to try to strategize around everything being at conflict with one another and how to optimize your way through that conflict. As far as what I don't like in the game, first of all, the stock system, which I do like to a degree, doesn't feel like there's enough control over it, except in specific instances. There are times where you have that last choice and you're choosing between this and that, but more often than not, the stock system kind of is at odds with one another, because if there's a card, let's pretend that this card, this biome over here, has a lot of these icons. Whenever there's a card in the row that has that, whenever I'm trying to choose one of those cards, I have to choose. Let me choose over here. Let's go over here. Let's drop this in play. If these are in play, I can choose to leave it behind because, you know, hey, I want to leave it behind so it further adds to the strength, which will help my trees, but there's almost usually no incentive to do so unless you're the last person standing, because usually if I leave it behind, someone else will take it, so I'll neither get the benefit of the stocks nor be able to plant more there. So trying to like lean into biomes that are doing well doesn't really work unless you're the last player, and usually the cards have been taken because, again, the other players have the same process in play. So I find the biome kind of mostly evolves on its own, with occasionally having options where you have to make a decision because of the bonus actions or because there's too many of one color, but more often than not, there was less control over the stock system that I'd want. Past that, I'd say the game works well, but it is fairly dry and procedural. I would say this is a kind of game that, at least for myself, I'm already like mentally past the puzzle a few plays in. I don't feel the need to continue trying different opportunities different ways. I like the puzzle it gives you. I like the little challenging aspect of, okay, great, having to build in certain ways. But primarily for me, it's about configuring and experimenting with different bonus actions and the ways those play with the main puzzle. And now that I've done that, I kind of feel like I've seen what the game has to offer. The game doesn't have a ton of variety into the experience. It's pretty straightforward as far as what it's doing, and it's often fairly dry and mechanical in the feeling that the game gives you while you're going through it. As far as I can see others not liking, it lacks any strong interaction offhand, which means this is a multiplayer solitaire for the most part. You're competing over the cards in the row, which means there's a drop of competition, but mostly you're just managing your own puzzle in the game. I'd also say that the bits knock over fairly easily in the game. These bits, as you've seen, even as I went through it, they knock over in the game, and so it kind of gets in the way a bit if you aren't hitting those things perfectly, and that's basically that. Which brings me to final thoughts, which is, for me, I like what Evergreen is doing, and I think it's fun, but I also think it gives me a fun little puzzle that doesn't inspire me to keep diving back into it. I like what the game did, and I enjoyed playing through it and trying to figure out how to make those shadows cast well, and how to grow those trees, and getting those bonus actions. All of it I enjoyed, but I enjoyed it with the limitation of I just don't see myself continuing to dive back into it, because what this game does, it does well, it doesn't give me a ton of variety, and it doesn't give me player interaction. The lack of variety stops me from caring about continuing to approach myself, and the lack of interaction means I can't even look forward to the ways you're going to really get in my way, forcing me to evolve and adapt my plays over future plays. So I like it, but I like it with the caveat that it's not a game I plan on playing that much longer. For me, this is a 3.5 out of 5. It's clever, but a little too dry, and not enough variety or interaction to keep me invested. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, photosynthesis is going to be the obvious choice. If you're looking for a game that gives you a lot of puzzling, managing, and all that, photosynthesis will have that. I actually think the rule set and general gameplay of Evergreen is better, but the flip side is photosynthesis operates on a same board, which means there's more interaction as you play through it. So I'm a bit of a, which one do I prefer? I'm not entirely certain. And then if you like the idea of the stocks and you want to see like more of a stock system actually evolve with a very clean set of rules, Stockpile from Navu Games is one that I have not played in a while, but I do very much enjoy and recommend. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.